Friends, I am so excited about this week's episode. I am bringing on somebody who has been a mentor in my life for the last 2 years and has really helped me feel empowered, has helped me find balance, and has really been this catalyst in me discovering how I want to run my business, how I want to relate to money, how I want to use the nervous system in my work. So this week on the podcast, I am so excited to announce that Kate Northrup is here with us. If you don't know Kate's work, Kate is an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and mother. Her work supports ambitious people to light up the world without burning themselves out. Kate teaches us how to heal our relationship with money, time, and work. She's the author of the best-selling books, Money, A Love Story, and Do Less. And she's the creator of the Do Less Planner and the host of the top-ranking podcast, Plenty. Her work has been featured by the New York Times, Oprah Daily, The Today Show, Glamour, Harvard Business Review, and so much more. She lives with her husband and business partner and their 2 daughters in Miami. And I cannot wait to dive into today's conversation. Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Hello and welcome. I am so excited to have you here. You have been this little magical being that's popped into my sphere at the right time, which it's really ironic because when I was going through a lot of health issues and a lot of fertility issues, your mom and her book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, popped into my sphere. And then she mentioned your name, but I didn't really look into it. And then I went through another little mini, who am I crisis, which then I found Sarah Jenks, which she mentioned you. And then it brought full circle of me going,
that's cool.
I know this last name Northrup. What does Kate have to offer me? And it's been you really, I believe the universe brings the people that we need when we need them.
It does.
And you came right at the right moment, and everything has just, it's not even that it's been peaceful. It's that I know I have resources when I need resources.
Yes.
Right. And that the answer is just on the other side. I just have to dig a little. Right.
Yeah,
So
totally. That's amazing.
So a lot of your work, from your books that you've wrote to the programs that you create, there seems to be a theme, or at least a theme I pick up on, which is self-love and self-worthiness, and how those two at the core, when we're starting to explore them, it's really about coming back to using our cycle as a power, about listening to the messages of our body, and about trusting our intuition and playing around with our intuition, getting curious about it. Would you say that's kind of what you feel your work is about?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that I am really here to be an advocate for our bodies and for our true nature, and to help remind people of what they already know, what their bodies already know, and just kind of guide folks back to their original true nature. And part of that is absolutely our intuition. And, I believe that our intuition is the divine, God speaking through us and guiding us from within. So it's really that remembering of our divine spark.
Right. And I feel like so many women, at least a lot of the women I work with that come to me originally, there is a lot of fear around their bodies, a lot of fear around maybe what they've been told by the medical community, how illnesses, diseases, or whatever are showing up in their body, how it's manifesting, and really feeling broken versus seeing it as this opportunity to explore. And I think that's one thing that I love about your work and about what I learned in Women's Bodies, Women Wisdom, was a lot of this idea of that our body's always speaking to us. It's this vessel that's trying to communicate, and it's always trying to lead us back. Like, even when I was doing my yoga therapy certification, one of the common themes was we always want homeostasis. The body's always trying to achieve that. And we just have to help it. Like, we just have to
Yes.
listen to it and give it the support, and it will do the work. That none of these things are forever or can't have to be forever necessarily. And in your book, Money Love Story, you talk about some cervical issues that you went through and how you really used it as this ally to help you find your next best step, to get into alignment, that your body was speaking to you because you were working out of alignment.
Yeah. So what happened is I had an abnormal pap smear, and this was in my mid 20s. Like, I want to say like maybe I was 26 or so, right in there, 26, 27. So I had this abnormal pap smear. I had HPV, which is like 85% of people have that. And so that in and of itself wasn't like a huge thing to be worried about, but the abnormal pap, I was like, okay, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. And so what was suggested to me was this LEAPS procedure. And then I was told that essentially I had all these precancerous cells, and it was like a lot of kind of alarm bells. Luckily, I was at a women's health practice that was like really supportive and lovely. And actually, it was the practice that my mom founded. They've now closed, but it was called oh my gosh, Women to Women in Yarmouth, Maine. I'm like, what was it called? I literally grew up there. But they've now closed their doors. But anyway, I still like, it still felt very like, okay, there's something wrong. You have to do something about it. And if you don't do anything about it, essentially it's going to turn into cervical cancer. I mean, they did not say it like that, but that was more of the mainstream. Like, if I had done the research on, WebMD or whatever, that's like would be the conversation. Or if I went to like more of a mainstream gynecologist, that would have been the message. And I just believe in our body's ability to give us messages about patterns that are no longer serving us. And that if we change those patterns, we can change the reality of our bodies. And yes, absolutely, nutrition plays a factor, supplements play a factor. But so much of it is energetic and emotional. And I could see the way that I was working in a way that I was sacrificing myself. And the way my mom would describe it, and it's like kind of aggressive, but it is the prostitute archetype of basically like hoeing myself for, for what I didn't believe in, what was not in alignment. Sorry, my video is doing something weird. There we go. So it was a metaphor for a way that I was not setting good boundaries. It was for a way that I was not honoring myself. And I needed to change. I was playing small. I was not valuing my contribution. I was not taking myself and my own worth seriously. And that was that archetype that was playing out. And there are, I learned, of course, from my mom. She was one of the pioneers on the mind-body connection and psychoneuroimmunology. And the fact that when we have these different patterns, they show up in some relatively predictable ways in our bodies. So the kind of emotional and behavioral patterns that somebody who has breast cancer might have is consistent across the board. The type of patterns of folks who have abnormal pap smears and cervical dysplasia, and that is like a consistent pattern of behavior. And I was fitting that pattern. Doesn't mean it's, a foregone conclusion. And this is in no way saying that our illnesses are our fault, but we are co-creators with our bodies. And my body was looking to get my attention. Our bodies are our friends. Our bodies are calling our attention in a loving way. And if we don't listen to the whispers, they need to yell. Yep. And there had been plenty of whispers for me. And so now my body was not full on yelling, but it was yelling a little bit. And so what I did is I really went inside and I really looked at, where am I sacrificing myself? Where am I playing small? Where am I letting myself be taken advantage of? Where am I not advocating for how I need to be treated, how I need to be compensated? And I saw a lot of different places that was happening. And so I really dramatically changed my life. I sold most of my belongings. What was left fit in one tiny corner of the smallest U-Haul you can rent. Like, it was all banging around back there because there wasn't enough to hold it steady. And I bought a Toyota Prius and I decided to go off on this road trip of indefinite length to be on an adventure and to explore the concept of financial and emotional freedom. And when I went back to my incredible nurse practitioner, Marcel Pick, who also is a Hay House author, she's great. We redid the path and it was clear and everything had totally cleared up. And she said, "What did you do? This is remarkable. What did you do?" And I told her that I had basically changed my entire life and how I was working and my entire business setup and literally everything. And she was like, "That's really remarkable. And that's what it takes." Like you don't have to move and sell all your belongings. That's not what I'm saying. But when, when the body is asking us to make a change, if we make that change, sometimes we can really notice deep, profound physiological changes that even seem miraculous. And so that's what happened with that.
And you also mentioned when you wrote that in the book too, about how there was a small episode where things got worse before they got better. But that was also a big lesson for you that sometimes the body just has to really purge. Like, it's kind of like when you overstress and then all of a sudden you're like, I can breathe. And then you get a cold, right? And that's kind of how your body manifested as well. What I find so fascinating about that story is there's so many correlations that I can relate to, because I also, much like you, around 28, I think it was, I had abnormal PAPs. And I, at the time, was disconnected from my body fully. So I had the LEAP procedure because I really reacted out of fear. It was like, okay, I need to do this. But from that procedure, I went on to having 3 ectopic pregnancies. I went to having 3 pregnancies with incompetent cervix where I was on bed rest. And my middle child was born at 31 weeks. And it was after my second child was born that I went to go see a naturopathic doctor for the first time. And I was like, okay, my body's been whispering and now it's yelling at me. And this is going to turn into cervical cancer. Those were my exact words. It's going to turn into cervical cancer. I need to figure out what's going on with my body. Can you help me learn what emotions, what patterns, what ancestral healing maybe I need to do? I have no idea. Like, I am so confused by this, but Western medicine is providing me nothing. And I'm tired of living in fear. And it was the catalyst that changed everything, right? It was from that, it was like these magical little opportunities where all of a sudden a stranger would reach out to me and say, "Hey, I think you might be interested in this training. This person from the UK is coming to your city. You should do it." And I was like, okay, like, I don't know who this person is. And it changed that I quit my job and I now teach women about their cycles.
So cool.
So it's really interesting that, yes, when our body talks to us, even when we're afraid of it, if we just get in relationship with it, everything can change.
Just leaning in to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no longer treating our bodies as adversaries, but treating them as partners.
Yeah. I love that. Which kind of goes into this other topic that you talk quite a bit about, which when I heard it, I was like, this is fascinating, is egg wisdom. And this whole concept of how we choose, that the egg chooses the sperm, and how this really plays out in women's lives and how we manifest and how we call in our alignment, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. So I learned about egg wisdom from my mom. And so I just on behalf of my maternal lineage, I really like to teach people about it because we all need to know. So no matter what your physiology, no matter what your gender expression, every single one of our bodies was formed from an egg. And so this is the imprint, this is kind of the divine imprint of how every single one of us was formed. So this is the wisdom that's running at least part of our system. And so when the ovary releases an egg each month, that egg actually puts out this hormonal signal because the egg does not go running all around the fallopian tubes and the ovaries and going down to the cervix to go find the sperm. The egg actually just gets released and sits there. But it has this trusting, this strong, trusting signal that it sends out, like a frequency, literally, that goes, it travels all the way down to the opening of the cervix so that if there are sperm present at that time, they know where to go. And that hormonal signal actually speeds up the rate at which the sperm can swim to the egg. So it is the epitome of feminine wisdom to sit and trust and essentially be the lighthouse. So rather than going running all around looking, it just is sitting and receiving. Now, then when the sperm show up, it looks like, when you look under a microscope, it looks like the strongest, most persistent sperm wins, and that's the one that gets in. What's actually happening is that the egg is choosing. So the egg has an excellent boundary, and she is unavailable for what's not right for her. But when she senses that there is the right sperm, and that has a whole bunch of things to do with DNA and anyway, but the egg is looking for basically a healthy sperm that's going to help create the strongest offspring. And so the egg membrane actually becomes porous just to the sperm that she is choosing. So it's not what we think. It's not that the sperm chooses the egg and just gets in. It's that the egg chooses. And she is receptive and available to that which is right for her. Strong boundaries for that's what's not right for her. Receptive and open to that which is right for her. Now, the egg also has the ability to repair the sperm's DNA if there's anything wrong with it, which we know is the feminine capacity to improve upon everything that we come into contact with. You know, I remember when I met my husband, he had a very tidy, orderly apartment, but it was like ugly. It's just like the classic man, not really. I mean, this is so gendered and so stereotypical, but it just happened to be true for him. Like he needed the feminine principle to egg him on, as my mom always says. So the egg has the ability to improve upon whatever it finds. And then it has enough nutrients to provide for itself and the sperm through the several day, up to a week journey down the fallopian tube, down until it embeds in the uterine lining, which then will begin to feed the new embryo. And so the egg also brings snacks, which if anybody who knows me knows that that is the way I embody the feminine principle. I always have snacks in my purse for everyone. We just are nurturing. We just want to make sure everyone's fed, everyone's cared for. I think that is, to some degree, our true nature. And we can see it in the way that the egg operates biologically. Now, if that month there's not a sperm present, the egg simply passes through and clears out with the uterine lining. There's no big fanfare. It's just passing along through the cycle. And then there's another egg the next month. And so whether you are ovulating or not, whether you are somebody who's menstruating or not, this is not about the literal biology. This is about the metaphor. And we can ask ourselves in any given moment, am I being the egg or am I being the sperm? And our culture teaches us to be the sperm. It teaches us to work hard, to hustle, to go hard after anything we want, and to beat out all the other sperm. We have not leaned nearly heavily enough into egg wisdom and the wisdom of trust and the wisdom of receptivity and the wisdom of good boundaries, but welcoming in what's right for us, the wisdom of nourishment. and beauty and enhancing that which we find and leaving it even better than we found it. That's the feminine principle at work, and it's powerful. It is the basis for every single one of our bodies. So we can tap into that programming anytime we want and powerfully be the egg to put out the signal to then call in what we desire without having to run around and go look for it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's so perfect when you think about your book, Money Love Story, because you talk about going on this road trip, which is where you invited your husband to come along, right? And from there, that is when your relationship bloomed, right? It wasn't like you guys were dating and then you got into the vehicle and do it. And if you look at Mike now, let's do a little shout out to Mike, because he is such, like, he's a perfect, well, from what I've witnessed, he's a perfect mate for you. At the conference that I just did with you, one of the most memorable moments that I thought was so powerful was you were on stage and one of the people that worked for you leaned over to Mike and said, "That's your wife up there. Like, she's amazing." And he stopped the whole thing and was like, "No, no, no, no." And he pulled her up on stage and he was like, "She just said this, but I want everyone to witness how amazing you are too. Like, you all are amazing." And like, that was your egg picking the perfect sperm.
Yes, it was. And so that's where our intuition comes in, because you mentioned that the egg is not like, it's not a logical process. She is sensing which sperm is right, because the egg doesn't have a brain, right? Yeah. It's all energetic, and we can really trust ourselves and our instincts. That's also egg wisdom at play. I invited Mike to go on this road trip, which was really random. I had only met him in person 2 times. He was basically a stranger, but I had such a strong intuition, not because I thought we were going to date, not because I thought we were going to get married and have 2 babies and run this business together. I had no idea. I just was like, had a strong hunch. So I went with it because I trust my intuition. And I do think it is, it's like giving us instructions always about the divine plan if we will listen.
Which runs into trusting your body and how you really have built a 7-figure business off of your intuition, off of trusting, off of doing things that most people in business might be like, is that really the best move? One in particular, which I'm literally calling in right now as I'm doing a big transition in my company, was when you decided to close down Origin, your membership. That, when I got the email saying you're closing down Origin, I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And when you got on the call and you were just like, listen, it is a really amazing membership. It's doing really well. There's no logical reason, but just there's something inside me that says it's time for it to be done. And I thought that was very powerful and beautiful, because right now that's what I'm leaning into, that a part of what was guiding my business was my story of fertility, of the ectopic pregnancies, of healing and working with fertility clients. But there's this part of me, this yearning to go deeper, to explore more, to go more into the feminine wisdom, into cycles and teaching women beyond fertility. And so I've decided to close down my fertility programs. Wow. They make me the most money, but it doesn't feel aligned anymore. And I think that's so beautiful. And I carry the egg wisdom, and I carry your example of like, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay.
More than okay. I mean, I will just tell you, we had our first multi-7-figure year last year, the very same year that I cut our Origin Mastermind, which was a $400,000 a year revenue stream. And I cut our Origin membership, which was an over $600,000 a year. So I just, at the beginning of the year, was like, we are going to cut out 2 revenue streams that are bringing in $1 million. I do not know precisely how that will be replaced. And then we did multiple 7 figures. So I want to say, this is something I talked about with my friend James Wedmore on his podcast about leaving a margin for magic. We do not need to know every step of the way. All we have to do is the next right thing, and then trust that will catapult the things that need to shift to allow for the next right thing and the next right thing. But just like, it's so cheesy, but it's true, or it's cliche. But I'm sure people have heard that analogy that when you're driving at night, you can only see 20 feet in front of you in your headlights, but you don't freak out every 5 seconds being like, oh my God, I can't see the road past 20 feet. You just trust that the road is going to continue. And as you move forward, more and more of the road is revealed, and it is about 20 feet at a time. And that is all you need to see at any given time to make the entire journey in the dark. And that is our lives, if we will allow it to be so. We're so obsessed with finding this external sense of safety through knowing the path and knowing the plan and knowing what's going to come next. But when we lean into accessing an inner connection to safety through our source, like our true source, we realize that there never was, it all is a mystery. It all is a mystery. But if we can lean into that trust and safety inside, it gets to be even better than it would have been if we had followed our 5-year plan.
Yeah. And another example of that was when you took a bunch of time off because you knew you needed to rest. I think it was 6 weeks. It was either 6 weeks or 2 months. I can't remember, but you decided to just, you know what, we're going to put everything on pause. And you talk a lot about this in your new course, Relax Money, about going, how comfortable am I going to be? Like, how much debt are we going to go into that I'm comfortable with? And then let's go into that. So whatever time that gives me, let's do it. And then, in fact, you actually made more.
Well, what happened is it was just this moment in time where my husband was sick with this sort of mysterious illness he'd been struggling with for 3 years at the time. And then during that time, he also broke his knee for the first time, which then he ended up breaking again 18 months later when he got hit by a car. So we were just like in it. And so crazy. And I felt so much stress and pressure financially for the family. And I was also the primary parent because my husband was sick. And he just was not at capacity. It was like less than 50% capacity. And that's really hard when you have 2 little kids and a company and payroll and just all of it. Listen, obviously single parents are doing that all the time. And so I just came up with this experiment with my coach because I was like, I don't want to just like ramp up and offer, like come up with a new offer or a new marketing thing or whatever to relieve the financial pressure. That's what I've always done in the past. And I could tell it was an old pattern that had to go. And also my hormones were all out of whack and my adrenals were out of whack. And I had just gotten my blood work back. And my doctor was like, basically your brakes are broken. And so is the gas. And like, if you keep going this direction, you're going to get really sick. So that was a wake up call as well. And so we did this experiment where for 90 days, I would just relax instead of ramping up. And Origin was open at that time. So I was still delivering our coaching calls and delivering the content, but I was just delivering on my existing promises as opposed to like ramping up to do something new to quote unquote fix the problem. And what happened is like that 90 days came and went. We didn't go into any debt and we hit all of our financial goals while I was really focused on relaxation. I was like, watching TV in the middle of the day and hanging out with girlfriends in Miami and going to the beach. And I was just like, this is wild. And it was another layer. I mean, Do Less had come out in 2019, but this was 2 years later. And it was even a more deep level of the concepts, adding in the piece that I didn't know about when I wrote Do Less, which is the nervous system, and really realizing the degree to which our nervous system set points are determining our reality. Yeah. We will recreate the energetic environment that matches our childhood experience over and over and over again until we update our nervous system thermostat. And so I was updating my nervous system thermostat to feel safe in a state of relaxation. And I had never done that work before.
And it just goes to show how important rest or relaxation is to healing, but also to mapping out our aligned life. that feels right to call it that. And that goes back to the menstrual cycle. Like how many women feel like they can't rest or they have to pretend like they don't bleed and they show up and they push through. And then now we see fibroids and now we see like all these different conditions. And it's because of this constant trying to meet the hustle culture, because we've been taught that productivity is what's going to make us money. Productivity or hustle is what's going to give us the space where we're recognized or we're acknowledged or worth, where in fact it's through rest that we really give the opportunity for intuition to speak, for us to find balance, for us to really feel inspired in our life and not burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to highlight though that we think like rest is like a day at the beach. It is deeply uncomfortable for when you are somebody who is ambitious, who is any kind of like overachiever or type A, or, considers yourself very capable. It will be very painful to rest and relax. So I want to highlight that because that's why we don't do it. It's not that we don't do it because we think it's going to be, we will delude ourselves by saying like, I can't rest because I'm so busy. No, you're not resting because you're trying to avoid feeling. Let's just be honest, because when we slow down, all of this stuff comes up to be felt that we never had the space or capacity to feel before. And it is an opportunity to be with those lost, stuck, hurt parts of ourselves that need witnessing. And it's not comfortable necessarily. I mean, in the end, it feels better than it would have otherwise. But during that 2-month period when I was, putting relaxation first, despite all the evidence that it was not a good time to do so, I spent a lot of time crying in bed. Like it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that now in my life, relaxation isn't fun. Like now it's delicious. I read a book. It's so great. I'll just, it's way different. But at first it was deeply uncomfortable. So this is not necessarily going to feel good. And I want to highlight that just to call it out front so that we're not like thinking like, oh, it's all spa days. I mean, it might be a spa day, but you might be crying during the massage.
Yes. And I think sometimes when I think that it can be masked too, that when we are in this rest state or relaxation state or calling it that, and it's feeling really good, it might feel really good, but there's times that we're also not allowing ourselves to feel either. Like we are still putting up those boundaries to disassociate. Yes. And I see this a lot in my husband. Like he's like, I need to take a break, but I'm like, I can just see it in his face. I can see the glossiness in his eyes. I'm like, your brain is still going. You're just not moving. And that's not really rest. That's disassociating.
Right. Like for some of us, and also depending on our human design, our astrology, just like our makeup, rest it's not going to necessarily look like doing nothing. Like my version of rest might be taking a walk, journaling, reading a book, talking to a friend. So if you struggle with doing less, I really recommend having a list of active rest things that you can do. Like I once had a coach who I freaking love, Shayla Davison. She was actually at Relax Money Live as well. And she gave me this assignment once a week to sit for an hour and do nothing, like literally stare at the wall. It was brutal. I think at this point it wouldn't be so bad, but at that time in my life, like it was so deeply painful because I'm not talking about with rest, like necessarily doing nothing. There's so many nourishing ways to rest. And one of the concepts that I love to draw from is the world of regenerative agriculture and growing plants in a way, growing food in a way that is actually regenerative to the soil and makes the soil healthier in the process. I think about our bodies and our souls as soil and as the soil of our lives. And so wondering, how can I run my business? How can I run my life so that my body as the soil, the humus, the root word of humus and human means of the ground. It is the same root word. Humus is the topsoil, the rich topsoil that is nutrient dense. So there's so many beautiful parallels, but One of the concepts that I like to draw from is this idea of cover crops. So, cover crops are things that if you are practicing regenerative agriculture, you plant these things. They are not cash crops. So, they're not meant to be sold. You literally plant them to grow because the process of growing them re-nutrients the soil and also ensures that the topsoil won't get eroded off, won't get run off. And so, cover crops can be a way of sort of active rest in our lives. So whether your cover crops are like reading novels or reading memoirs or knitting, or like maybe you're redecorating a bathroom or whatever it is, like it may look like you're doing something, but it's actually a cover crop that is re-nutrienting the soil. It doesn't have to be income generating, but you actually can re-nutrient yourself through an activity that is just really there to nourish you.
I just read the book, Fair Play. And
I haven't read that yet.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
But she talks about unicorn space, which is the same idea. And so it's
cool.
like when you're dividing up all the household tasks, the daily grind tasks, both partners have to have a card for unicorn space. You guys have to create it. And unicorn space is not necessarily your job or watching TV. It is the thing that lights you up and that makes you feel alive again. And so, yeah, it's the unicorn space. It's finding the time to really nourish yourself. So a lot of what we're talking here, we're bringing in do less a little bit. But I really want to get into Relax Money because it has been, it's been so good. Like, I love the Money Love Story. I love the do less method, which still, I think you've created this beautiful container with Relax Money that brings in both of those books, brings in some of the like really powerful components of the Origin membership back into this idea of how we can integrate it with our money stories. And it's been a profound year of me it's been almost a full year now that I've been in Relax Money. And I guess what I want to share my story, if that's okay, of what conspired for me. So when I decided to join Relax Money, the year prior was probably the hardest year that we've experienced in a long time, at least the hardest year I've experienced in my marriage. And it was because my husband, he was working for the same company for 17 years. And he had been tapped to buy this company. And then all of a sudden, the company got sold and had to merge with another one. And now he was just in a pool amongst a lot of people. So he went through a career crisis of like, what does this mean? Do I go it on my own? That's scary. I'm the sole provider, kind of like how you were kind of feeling, right? Like this little crisis going in. So, I was really trying to create space and hold space for him. It wasn't my story, but it was his, but it was impacting my nervous system. And then shortly after all that happened, my dad had passed away very suddenly at 60 of a heart attack that just spontaneously happened that we were not prepared for. He had his own business that my brother helped run with him. And when he passed, we discovered that there was a lot of debt, a lot of business debt because of the pandemic and being in construction business. So there was not a lot coming in, a lot of debt. My mom was in spiral. My first instinct, and this is like the nervous system at its prime, went into that fight state of, I looked at my husband, I was like, okay, that's it. You're in crisis. My mom's in crisis. I just have to figure out a way to make $500,000. Like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do the thing. I'm gonna make the money. And I'm gonna solve all your problems. But then what happened shortly after that is my body went into freeze, right? Like I really went into this freeze where all of a sudden I was immobilized. I didn't want to work. I didn't know how to do anything. And then panic set in and anxiety set in. And anytime the word money came up in any context, I just started to hyperventilate. Like I just couldn't cope. And perfect alignment time, Relax Money came into the forefront. And I joined it going, this is going to be my way to make the money so I can solve everyone's problems. But what happened, and I think this is so interesting, is that I didn't make the money, but in that process, my husband, 4 different people approached him with giving him money to start his own business. He got his dream offer that like, it's still, we're in the midst of figuring it all out still, but we're both like, how did this happen? Like it is the most beautiful offering that we could have ever expected. Wow. My mom paid off 2 business loans and was able to pay off, I think it was around $30,000 worth of line of credit debt. It didn't impact my direct business finances, But what I've seen is
But
by
the
me doing,
system that you're part of, because we are not
yes,
separate from each other economically or
yes,
energetically. And you making that shift impacted the collective system that you're part of because we are not separate. And so,
yeah,
yeah, did it come into your bank's account specifically? No, doesn't matter. We are so caught up in the lie of separation that we will discount. Oh,
yeah,
I didn't earn it personally. Or like I have some clients who've had inheritance and they just are so disassociated from that money and they're not putting it to any good use because they're telling this stupid meritocracy story of like, if you didn't earn it, if you didn't trade your blood, sweat, and tears, if you didn't sacrifice, then it doesn't count. Abundance is abundance. You
yeah,
called it into the system. Like
yeah,
you did that.
yeah.
It's
And
amazing.
my nervous system was just like now when my mom, it's so funny. My mom, when she talks to me about money now, I'm just like, it's just invoices for blessings already received. My husband rolls his eyes. He's always like, oh my God, here we go again.
Because it's true.
It's true. And I feel like this is the tool I needed. This was the tool that not only helped the people most important to me,
Mhm.
but it helped me move through my grief.
Mhm.
It helped me get clarity on where I wanted to go with my business and feel safe of doing the jump. Like there's just this tool that I have now all the time with me. And I just think it's so powerful. And then another layer was that when we were at Relax Money Live and you had Human Design as one of the guest speakers, and she was talking about our Vedic astrology, there was this light bulb moment that went off because she was talking about the centers that are aligned with prosperity and
Yes.
abundance.
Yes.
All of mine are in home and family.
Wow. See?
And so I talked with her during the mingle
Oh.
upstairs afterwards, and I was just like, I don't think this is not, it's not that I can't work right now, but that my purpose right now is at this time of life with three young kids under the age of 10
Ugh, I
and
mean, yeah, hello.
my mom with being a widow now and my husband doing living out his career dreams, which I'm so happy to support. My energy is meant to be here to help support all these people.
Yes.
And it relieves
Yes.
so much pressure, so much
Oh,
pressure.
I love this so much. I love this so much. This is great.
Yeah. So relax money, everyone. You need to go check it out because it is really, I think the piece with me is that you brought it into conversation about money, but it was the nervous system work. It was also learning the stories I was telling myself. Like when you had us write out our money story, I thought my money story was going to be, when you said to do it, I was like, oh, I already know what my money story is. My parents were teens when they had me. Like scarcity was the name of the game.
Yeah, sure.
Like I totally knew where that was coming from, but it was amazing because you had us handwrite it out. But the more that I wrote out, the more stories were coming out about my insecurities of being classified as a stay-at-home mom and how my husband was the main breadwinner and how I wasn't contributing. And these were never things that he ever said, but for whatever reason, I've allowed it to integrate into my DNA as my story. And I remember going, wow, there's some stuff to work on here, I guess.
Oh, yeah, because any kind of story that we're telling around lack and limitation constricts the entire system. So, as you were able to release those stories and shift your nervous system thermostat, your point of attraction shifted and you were able to open the channel of abundance into your family's life. You have been an essential ingredient for opening the channels of abundance and shifting the lineage around money for your children as well, which is so
Yes,
powerful.
it's so powerful. I I love that as I'm working through it, they're witnessing me working through it and that even how I communicate about money, it's a little bit different now, right?
Yeah.
And ownership and you call it stewardship. And I think that's so beautiful how we steward our money.
Yeah, because it's not ours.
Yeah.
It's not
And
ours, but it's flowing through our lives for a time. And during that time, we need to treat it well.
yeah. And that when you create space for it, there's more space. Like when we actually acknowledge where it is or where it's where it needs more support when we're
Totally.
calling that in, which is what you talk about with the invoices for blessing already received. I know I mentioned it and I love this term, so I want to mention it again.
Love it.
Is that, do you want to explain what invoices for blessings already
Yeah.
received is? Yeah.
So I feel like I heard this originally from Louise Hay, but honestly, I cannot find any place where she said it. So I'm gonna give homage to Lulu on the other side. May she rest in peace. But anyway, so the idea is that the word debt can come with a real vibration of guilt or shame or just the negativity. And all debt is that we have received a blessing that we have yet to pay for in full. So it is an invoice for a blessing already received. And as soon as I started calling my debt an invoice for a blessing already received, it lifted all of this shame and guilt. And it made me feel like, oh, that's no big deal. I just need to take steps to pay that off. But in the meantime, rather than beating myself up, which is not helping at all, in fact, it's making it worse, I can celebrate and give gratitude for and savor the blessings that I have received because I received them. And honestly, it's a privilege to live in a culture where we even have credit. There are many places where that's not accessible. Now, there's a shadow side to it, obviously, but the fact that like we can go get an entire education and pay for it later. I could go if I wanted to go see my family for some sort of emergent need and I didn't have the money, I can just go do that and then handle it later. There can be a cycle with that that's not so awesome. But when it's in terms of investing in things that we know are going to pay off, it actually is a smart move. Using debt, using invoices for blessings already received to your financial benefit is an entire paradigm that more people need to know about. Not buying shoes and, random clothes and like going to Target, but actually really considering like, if I invest this money now with the time value of money, how much could it make me in the long run? And would that be a smart investment to make? Like that's a whole paradigm that I teach inside Relax Money that's really important. And that is actually a paradigm of wealthy people that is not something that other folks who don't know the skills around money, they don't know that and they don't teach it to their children. So I want to make sure more people understand how to use debt as an investment.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to, we only have a few minutes left, but do you want to quickly kind of summarize what Relax Money is and what your purpose is of putting it out into the world? Because it is a very different approach to finances.
It's a very different approach. I don't know anyone else who teaches this. When I work with coaches or whatever, and they're like, who's your competition? I'm like, nobody. I'm the only one. So, it's really a program that simultaneously allows you to heal your nervous system thermostat set points around money. So while also taking practical steps to be a positive, loving steward of the money you already have and attracting more prosperity into your life. So it's a practical personal finance course combined with nervous system healing, combined with energetics, spirituality, and practical making more money. And so it kind of hits all of the factors so that you can update your money legacy, change your lineage, and heal your relationship with money so that life is more delicious and more relaxed, because there's always more where that came from. And we also need to take great care of what we already have. Money loves to have attention put on it, but the quality of that attention really matters. And what students tell me is that while they're in the course, they experience financial miracles because they're in an environment where they are co-regulating and where I'm holding the thermostat of expansion and possibility and prosperity. And when you're in that kind of environment with a community who's all committed to that kind of growth and expansion in a container of safety, you cannot help but expand. I mean, yes, there's homework and there's exercises, and yet there's something that also just happens in community by osmosis, because we cannot at all the time, our environment will best our behavior. Mm-hmm. Our behavior will not outpace our environment in terms of changing that reality. Our environment really matters. So that's why I teach the program live, because I want people to have that experience of community and of me being the thermostat while they update theirs.
I love it. And for people that are like, this is fascinating, this is interesting, I need to learn more, you are offering a free workshop right away. I know that it's had several different names.
Yes, this one is called Wide Receiver. I'm so excited about it. It's going to have new content, stuff that I've never taught before. I've already been downloading the whole curriculum. It's going to be a 3-part journey to take the initial steps to heal your relationship with money. So on day 1, you're going to understand how you have created the money reality you've created and how to create a new one, if that's what you desire. It's not stuff that you're going to hear in any other personal finance workshop. On day 2, I'll take you through a process to decode your unconscious to learn exactly the next right step you need to take practically to reach your financial goals. And then on day 3, we'll go into the 13-part roadmap to creating relaxed money in your life. So that'll be laid out like as a checklist to follow step by step.
And the link for this workshop is going to be in the show notes below. So if you are interested, I highly recommend this work. This, like you heard my story, it's a game changer. It is a game changer on many different levels. As well as you'll find all the links for Kate's books and her course, Relax Money. Make sure you go check them out because, like I said, you've just impacted my world in a way that deep healing had to happen. It was the next layer for me to come home to me. So thank you so much for being here, Kate. This has been such a great conversation, and I've loved exploring all of these topics with you today.
Thanks so much. This was so fun.
Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.